I'm Allison Miller, the CEO and founder of Happy Camper Live, and I am here at the Raising a Happy Camper podcast with my new camp friend, Sunday Oliver. Welcome, Sunday.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I really like what you do.
Thank you.
So I'm here because I wanted to talk a little bit about connecting with plants and ways that you can wildcraft with them. And so it's like connecting with plants is sort of the magic. I know that you talk. I looked at your website and you talk about using healing bowls. So there's a magical part to connecting to plants that anybody can do, and we used to all know how to do. And I'd like to bring that up because I think it makes it so much more fun when you're using the plants. I myself started wildcrafting when I was 14. I was a very big reader, and I was in the library, and suddenly it was like something tapped me on the shoulder and headed me toward a stack where, little did I know, there were tons of books on herbs and wildcrafting. So I started going out in the woods and wildcrafting, and I really enjoyed it. There is just something that connects you to a lot of supportive things when you go out in the woods and you do that, and you start, enjoying plants. And I'm sure you're familiar with that feeling because you're in a camp. And later in my life, I decided to live for 28 years without running water or electricity because I really, really wanted to understand plant life and everything that supports it. And interesting about everything that supports it, because we know because of spectrometers that all the elements that appear on Earth, in our soil, in our plants, in our air, are also in the cosmos. So it connects us to everything when we're in nature.
I love that. I love that. And what an incredible experience that you had for 28 years living without water and electricity. And, where were you living at the time?
Same area I am in now in Northern California in the foothills. And I did have water, but it was out of a spring or somebody else's well. So yeah.
That's great. So when you had this experience first of being in the woods and you were inspired by a lot of different things, but you talk about like the craft part, which is definitely something that we do at camp, and all of these arts and crafts and nature crafts. I'm really curious about that. What kind of work did you start doing around crafts and to begin with?
Well, I was mostly digging up things that were like folk remedy kinds of herbs, and plants, but also just identifying them and getting to know them, getting to know the communities, getting to know what's edible and what's not. These are ways that you can really feel more at home in the world, and that was exciting to me.
Yeah, that provides a whole feeling of safety to be able to identify the plants and know what they can be used for, what are safe purposes, also just kind of understanding that there's lots of different purposes that they can serve, right?
Yes, absolutely. And even twigs, which I want to get in toward the end of this podcast, because I just think it's so amazing. You think of twigs, well, they're just lying on the ground, but there are cool things you can do with them. So,
well, I jumped ahead of that. I jumped to that because being the camp person I am, I was like, tell me about the crafts, but we'll save that for the end then, if that's fine too.
Yeah, I would really like to talk about how you get a personal connection with plants, because I think that that's something, some kids might be too antsy to do this kind of thing, but I also think it's great for adults, honestly, because what you can do is you can learn the kind of intuitive connection that a lot of indigenous people still have, where the saying talk to plants is a little bit off because you're not going to hear a little voice probably, but you will get an intuitive hit as to what this plant is about. And this is how the Native Americans kind of learned to use plants in different ways and make different useful things for themselves. So here's a little exercise. One thing to know is that every time you inhale and exhale, you're connecting to plants because they breathe out oxygen and we give them carbon dioxide out. So that's a connection you have already. And nobody can take that away from you as long as you're
Right.
breathing. So it's nice to be aware of it, you know? And here's something you can do if you want to really get to know plants in this way. It's sort of like a little exercise. So take two plants in turn. It could be two trees, it could be two small plants, doesn't really matter what. But sit with them and touch them gently and sense how they feel. So like first one, kind of tune into it and like what um what kind of shape, what kind of texture, what kind of scent, what other things do you feel when you touch this plant? You might get a certain feeling. And then go to the other plant and do the same thing. And notice the differences because this is how you begin to get acquainted with the plant personalities, I guess I would call them. And
Well, I had this experience Sunday called forest bathing. And we went for a walk through the forest, and we experienced all of the different things through all of our senses. So I definitely understand that experience of connecting with the trees or the plants and being able to touch them, feel the vibration of the plants or the trees, the texture, the smell, right? I'm not suggesting anybody does this, but even tasting the little, dirt at the roots, was part of our experience because we were bathing in all of that nature. And it was really profound.
it is really profound. And again, talking when you were mentioning that sense of safety, I think that this really helps us have that and remember that we are a part of nature, which is something that's real easy to forget in modern culture.
Well, it's interesting. I had this thought, we sort of look at animals, right? We look at animals that way, right? And
Hmm.
where we see their personalities and the life and the warmth and the emotions that it like supports us with. And I think really what you're saying is that we need to look at the world of plants in the same way. And there's a lot that you can get from that experience of interacting with nature.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it makes the crafting experience that much richer. And so I want to talk about the next step, moving toward crafting. We are moving toward crafting.
It's okay.
But the next step is if you want to gather plants to craft with, this is one way that some indigenous people use. And I think it's a way, again, to connect to plants and have a respectful relationship with them. So what they would do is if you're looking for a specific plant, then the first one you saw or the first little group you see, they would make an offering of tobacco. Now, it doesn't have to be tobacco. It can be a song or a poem or some biodegradable gift that you can, special rock that you found, anything like that. But just like a mark of acknowledgement. And then you ask them to lead you to a bigger group of those same plants. And this is where your intuition comes in. You do have to use your intuition, and it might be awkward at first, but it's really worth trying because honestly, it's always worked for me. And
Hmm.
that way you can be sustainable in the way that you're wildcrafting.
So explain that to me a little bit more. So what is so I want to craft, and what you're saying is that that plant is going to be a live plant that you're going to be working with, or is it that you only work with, twigs and things that have, sort of reached their lifespan?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about both because I think, there are the plants that I want to talk about that are alive, they can be responsibly harvested. And the reason why I'm suggesting this is I don't think we can love what we don't know, and what we haven't experienced. And I think it's really important. well, we've just been talking about connecting with plants. And that is a sort of loving connection, really. So you get the information and the love sort of is in the same bundle. And the way this process goes is like once you reach that group of plants, and you know, when you find them, then you take a look and you say, okay, well, if you're gathering fruit, you can gather a lot of it. If you're gathering leaves, maybe a quarter of the group gather at most. If you're gathering, I don't think I have anything here on flowers, so
Hmm.
but that's another way of understanding that the plants will be there next year if you
Right.
harvest sustainably, but they won't if you don't.
Interesting. All right. So now we've gathered.
Right, now we've gathered. So now, here are some plants. One thing I want to say is that you may or may not have Wi-Fi when you are doing this. So you will want to download some pictures of plants. I'm going to talk about a few plants that are pretty common in a lot of places in this country, and in temperate zones in general. But it's really helpful to have a plant guide that's as local as you can get it. So even something as old-fashioned as a book, or download pictures from a site onto your phone before you go out and try to wildcraft and harvest. Okay. So one thing that a lot of people know already is clover. And
Oh,
the dried flowers make a really nice tea, or you do things like make chains and wreaths with them, depending, on your inclinations. The important thing about clover is to make sure that it's not on a lawn that's been pesticided or has
oh,
fertilizers on it. But
right.
other than that, clover is super abundant. It's, perennial, so you can feel
Right.
pretty comfortable about taking a lot of flowers.
Right.
Plantain's another one that's really abundant. It's a European import. I think clover is too. And um, it's a little flat plant that you can use as sort of a camp first aid kit if you get like a scratch or a bruise.
Hmm.
You can take two rocks and you can take plantain leaves and you can grind them up until they're like a messy mush. And then you just put them on the scratch or bruise or whatever it is. And that's a remedy people have been using for a while. So it's actually, I think it's super fun to like just use rocks that are in the area, because this is the kind of thing that indigenous people would have done. Well,
Right.
assuming they had plantain, but they would have used other plants in that same sort of way.
Right. Interesting.
Mullion's another one that I think is really pretty common. And one thing that's fun about mullein is you can rub it on your cheeks and it will make them a little bit redder if you take a leaf and rub it on your cheeks, which is kind of a fun thing to do. They used to call it Quaker rouge because Quakers weren't allowed to wear makeup, so that was how they prettied themselves up.
There you go.
Yeah. And again, it's a tea, it's a traditional folk remedy for colds. So
Mhm.
it's, it's sort of a medium tasting tea. It isn't exciting, but it's not terrible either. So another one I want to talk about is cattail. Cattail you can find in all kinds of areas, and except for all kinds of areas where there's water. That's a really key thing. They grow in high mountains, they grow in the lowlands, they grow a lot of places. And they used to be used for drying. If you dried them and soaked them, they were used to make rush chairs of like in colonial times in the US.
Mhm.
And some of those rush chairs are still around, so it's very strong stuff.
Oh,
Now,
wow.
if you want to try this yourself, you could make like a placemat or a trivet with the same process. You kind of weave them. You
Hmm.
need to dry them first, and they have to be dried in the shade. Otherwise, they'll get like really brittle if you dry them in the sun. Dry them in the shade, soak them, then weave them.
Right.
So, and cattails are like one of these super useful plants, because their roots are edible. You can dig them up and eat them. I tried this once when I went swimming off of Cape Cod, and I got a little woozy because it was super, super cold in the water. And I found a patch of cattails and I dug up a root and I ate it. And it was not very delicious raw, but it really got me, fortified again. And I'm sure that there are ways you could prepare them that would make them more delicious than that. But it's nice to know they're edible. You never know. And again, cattails are prolific plants. You don't, if you're pulling up the roots, you don't want to pull up too many, but you can try a few if there's a big patch, and the other ones will fill it in again.
Right. And when you say they're edible, there's certain parts of the cattail that's edible. It's
Yes,
really
just
like,
the root is edible.
right.
I
So
mean, the other parts I don't think would hurt you, but they're very fibrous. I was talking about, you rush tears that last 100 years, so you probably wouldn't want to chew on those if you had a choice of anything else.
right, right.
The heads are edible though, when they're green and young. The heads are edible, and also the pollen from the heads of the cattails. You can sort of strip some of that off. Again, you don't want to take it all, but you can take some and you can put it like making it cornbread or anything like that. You can
Right.
eat. The other thing you can do with cattail heads is when they mature and the fluff starts happening, you can make like little pillows out of them. Now, depending on how many people and how many cattails you have, it might be like a little doll pillow, but those are kind of fun. They used to be used in World War II. This was filling for lifesavers, so it's floatable. You could conceivably make some
Oh,
float
wow.
with a pool, like little
Sort
round
of
ones.
like cork. It has like that same sort of texture, firmness, like cork.
Yeah, and
So I could see that being like something you could do.
yeah, that's interesting
Okay.
to I had not thought about that way because when you do it, you sort of strip the fluff off and it's kind of almost like dandelion fluff. But but yeah, you're right. The texture is, so maybe that's the clue, that it's like that it feels like pork. That would be the plant talking to you.
Mhm.
And just to finish on the cattails, which is obviously a plant I really love a lot. The Indians used to make sleeping bags and pad cradles with that fluff. So it's, sort of like it it has been used for a long time for these purposes.
Oh, it's a lot of
Okay.
purposes.
Yeah, I know. Some plants really have a lot of purposes, and it's really interesting to, some plants just have a few, but yeah, some plants have tons.
Yeah, I'm just, I think as our viewers or experience this podcast, like part of me is like also checking it out online, looking at a cattail in its fluffy nature. So
Mhm.
I would encourage as you're, enjoying this and, bring your kids over and just Google a little of these pictures as you're, so that when you do go out, well, you said you could have an app that can tell you what some of these things are, but it's nice to educate yourself before you go, right, into for a walk around the lake or in the wilderness, and like know some of the things that you're looking for, because then you can use them, in purposes that have been suggested by you Sunday, just that education of what these plants look like to identify them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a fabulous way to get to know your plant community. And I agree. It's just like look up a few, don't make it like into this enormous project, but look up a few and then go out and look for them. And feel like you're sort of greeting a friend because you'll have already gotten familiar a bit. Yeah, I love that idea.
Yeah. So are there any other plants specifically that you wanted to mention?
There are a couple more, but I wanted to leave space for the twigs. So how much time have we got left?
Oh, come on, give us two. We can do it. You finish your
Okay.
plants and we'll do our twigs.
Alrighty. Alrighty. So wild grapes are the next one, and those are a plant that also occur all over the place. The
Hmm?
leaves are edible, and of course the grapes are edible.
Oh,
The leaves you can actually, I did this once. It is very sort of pernickety, but you can do it. You can make little dolmas. You know what a dolma is? They're a Greek food where basically it's stuff wrapped in a grapevine leaf. And
oh,
You do
Right.
it by, so you can fold over the sides of the grapevine leaf and then fold up the bottom, and then you kind of use the stem of the leaf as to poke through those and secure it. And that's the pernickety part because it doesn't always work. What you do is you take the leaves and you have to simmer them first. And they have this nice kind of lemony flavor. So they also add flavor. And then the stuffing can be just little dabs of, because these leaves are very small. The cultivated ones are much bigger, so it's easier to do the dolmas, but maybe like a teaspoon or two of, say, rice with vegetables and herbs in it, or, sausage and rice, or whatever you like to eat. And
Mhm.
then you fold up the vine leaf around it. And then you can eat it, and you can eat that hot, or you can, you have to cook it, sort of cook it again, and that, or you can eat it cold. It can make a nice snack. So that's a fun way to do. And also, the grapes in the fall are lovely, and you can feel free to eat a lot of them because grapevines will drop their leaves, and birds will be eating those grapes and dropping seeds everywhere. So just remember about the seeds, because if you're used to seedless grapes, that might be a little bit of shock. But also, what will be a shock is the taste of wild grapes, because the flavor of wild fruit is just so much more intense.
Mhm.
And it's such a lovely thing to just, like, you're just walking along the road, or in the woods or by a stream. Vines do like water, so that is a good place to find them, but not exclusively.
And we
So,
have a lot of wild raspberries around our camp.
oh, wonderful. How lucky for you. I love raspberries. Yeah, they're great. And wild blackberries too are wonderful. So,
Yes, I think we have those too.
yeah, you can make tea out of the leaves of both of those. You do want to be careful of the little prickles when you're picking them, but they make a nice tea too. So that's fun. Another thing that makes a nice tea that you probably know about is mint.
Mhm.
And mint is one of those plants that's super easy to identify because it's, has, the stems are square. Um, it has definite smell. There are like an infinite different kinds of mints in the wild. We select some of them, like spearmint and peppermint, but are many varieties, and they all cross. But there again, they're a nice tea. And if you get it fresh, you want to cover it and simmer it for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, because the fresh leaves need to be basically kind of cooked into tea.
Right.
And if you are hiking and you find a mint plant, if you're thirsty, or you like feel like you need a little mouth wetting something, take a little sprig of mint and chew it, and it'll make saliva cones in your mouth, and it'll taste refreshing and good. So that's another way to use mint. That's fun.
I did that all through my childhood.
Did you really? Oh,
I
cool.
did. We had mint on the side of our house, and I would go back there and just suck on a leaf, or, chew it. And we have some at camp too. Mint is
Nice.
probably my favorite, like, to experience that way.
It is a wonderful plant, and it's just like, it's so generous with itself. It's an easy to propagate, and you can get another mint plant just by picking off a sprig of mint and sticking in a glass of water. It'll grow roots. So
I
there's your mint plant. So if you really like a wild mint, you can do that, and propagate it. Yeah, yeah, mint is really nice. The other thing you can do with mint, if you're in a camping situation and you have ants, this, depending on the mint, this may work better or worse, but you can crush it up so the oils are released, and you can put it where the ants come in, because one remedy for ants in your kitchen is peppermint oil. So
right.
this is like a sort of an improv camp version of that. So I'm going to talk about one more plant, and then, oh no, I want to talk about some things that you can find kind of more in the off season. Okay,
Okay.
so things like cedar, cedar shavings. If somebody has been cutting cedar, you can use those to make a little sachet, like make a little cloth bag, and it will keep moths out of your clothes. Also, it
Oh,
smells super nice. You can take cedar leaves, and this is true of fir leaves also. If you want to scent stationery, or say drawer lining paper. I honestly am not a person who lines my drawers, but some people are.
mhm.
And you can put those leaves together in a closed box, for about a month with the paper, and the paper will become scented and give off scent. So it's kind of a nice little luxury thing to do.
Right. It's not so luxurious if you're taking it and making it yourself. It's just this little nice treat you can make for yourself that you don't have to feel is so fancy, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's just one of
Mhm.
the nice things you can do in life. And if it's stationary, you're sending it to a friend or a family member and
Yeah.
they get it too. So that's really nice. I agree. They get part of your plant experience. That's pretty cool.
Well,
Yeah.
I think kids are always looking to, I don't know, I was used to always try to make gifts, give gifts that are things that, you've made. And so these are actually a lot of really nice ideas to make the stationery or a sachet or, things that, uh,
Right.
you know, that you can share and feel like, you don't need a budget for it. The nature is providing you all of these things, just in return for your kindness, right? Back to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And as a gift, I think it's such a nice personal kind of gift because you've really made it. You didn't just like go to a store and buy it. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but there is a
Yeah,
little extra something when you make something for
yeah.
somebody.
I think it's
Yeah,
really neat.
I do too. I agree. Okay. So do you want to go on to twigs now?
Let's do it. Let's
All
do
right.
it.
So twigs. Now, for a lot of twig projects, you will need pruners. So depending on the age of the child, you might want to more or less supervise. Sandpaper is also helpful for some of them. Here are the most simple one comes from a hat rack that was in my grandmother's house when I was growing up.
Hmm.
And it was basically just a branch. The butt end of it was probably mm, maybe an inch in circumference. The tips were maybe like a quarter inch in circumference. It was a branch with a bunch of branching twigs, and it had been stripped of bark and varnished. I would recommend an oil finish personally, but this is the kind of thing that you can do in, varying degrees as far as the pruner use goes. Because like a kid can kind of break off the little skinny thin
Mhm.
ends of the branches. And then somebody can come along with the pruners, and then the kid can sand it. Or if the kid's old enough to use pruners, then they can just do it that way.
Right.
You can find downed dead things. I would recommend hardwood because pine tends to get soft and sort of get buggy and decay. But anything that looks like that, you could spend time stripping off the bark. And then if you don't have the oil here, you can take it home and oil it. You can sand the ends. And I love that hat rack. In fact, I still have it because I thought it was one of the things I wanted for my grandmother's house. So it makes a really unusual, again, household accoutrement or gift.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Very
Yeah.
sentimental. That's nice. Thank you for sharing that story.
Thank you. Yeah, it was fun to do. And another couple things that I found out about twigs were in this book by Story Press. I'm not getting any advertising. I'm not advertising this. It's called. Sorry, I have to grab it because I just forgot. Rustic Accents for Your Home: 45 Projects from Vines, Twigs, and Brambles.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So one of the things they talk about is that's actually where I got the stationary scenting tip from too. One of the things they talk about is making it like a little desk set. So you could get a
Oh,
can, an empty can, and you might want to like cover it with something or paint it or something like that. And then what you do is you cut twigs to fit the height of that can
uh-huh.
and enough of them to go around.
Uh-huh.
So you don't need a measuring device per se. You just need the
Right.
can. And again, pruners are handy here. You want it to be like maybe the size of a pencil. You could try it with smaller ones though. I mean, it's always worth trying if you're interested in
Right.
experimenting. And then you glue them to the can. Now, if you want to get really nature prone about it, if there are pine trees nearby, I would look around and see if there are some nodules of pine sap on there. And a lot of times, even if they're hard, the underneath will still be wet and sticky, and it
Oh,
makes a very effective glue. I actually had a friend who used to make these beautiful ornamental pipes using bones and fur and stones and stuff. And he used pine sap. It was very
oh
durable.
wow.
Yeah, it will glue to pretty much any surface, metal for sure. So,
Well, that's
yeah,
great. That would make
yeah,
it really fun because you could also do the whole project outside. Um, you know, I mean, I guess you bring your can with you, but everything else you can do, just outside with all of nature's treasures.
right. And a lot of times, if you're camping, you do have a couple of canned foods with you. So, this is a great way to
True.
use up that can. So then after you do that, you can tie the twigs, sort of top and bottom just for looks. You could ostensibly use one of those cattail leaves that you dried and soaked for that. Raffia is what they have in the book, and also
Right.
just plain old twine would work. So just
Yep.
however you want to go. Or you can experiment with, if there are any tough grasses around, you could just experiment with them and see how they work. Maybe they
Yeah.
won't, maybe they will, but it's fun to try.
Oh, that's a great idea. That's a beautiful project. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and you can also make a paper holder that matches sort of in a similar way. You
Mhm.
take their example with the clementine crate, but any like fairly sturdy box that's low, like only a few
Mhm.
inches high would do. And it's just basically the same process. You can cover it in cloth or paper or paint it, or you can just leave it the same if you like the way the box looks. You glue this, you cut sticks that are all the right size to cover that the height of the box and glue them around and do the same. And then you have like a paper holder or a letter holder that's very rustic.
Oh my gosh, that's perfect.
Isn't that cool? I just thought that was so nice in that book. And I'm not advertising this book, but I also wanted to say that a couple of other projects are kind of too complicated for me to describe, but which you can find in that book or possibly online. I don't know. They show how to make a little log cabin dollhouse out of twigs, which
Well,
I think
that's
is really,
great.
really
That's
cool.
a great idea.
And little furniture, doll furniture that
Yeah.
sort of similar. You just cut them to the sizes that you want, and you tie them together and glue them together. Yeah,
Oh, that's nice. Those are some
yeah.
really great ideas. Yeah, we do. I've seen also rocks that they've taken the leaves and raffia just kind of wrapped around the rocks to make like a door stopper, uh,
Oh,
which was really pretty. So
mhm,
that's like one craft that I really like. I also, one of the other things that um, I like to do, I'm into sound healing, and
mhm,
you can make instruments by walking through nature and taking a branch with leaves that, like a dead leaves on the branch that have been dried out. And you can kind of tie them together, and
mhm.
you can use the that sound to, of the leaves rustling,
So like a sort of rattle, a gentle rattle. Oh, I
yeah.
love that. That's great.
And very cool. And just depending on the different leaves, they make different sounds. So that's something that I've seen lately that I was like, oh, that would be great to do on a nature walk and come back. And it sort of looks like a broom when you bring it,
Mhm.
bring it in, but it's serving as an instrument, which is really cool.
Oh,
Uh,
it is really cool, and it's another way to get acquainted with different plants. There are differences in the sound. That's another way to understand them. Yeah,
Oh,
I love that.
absolutely. So yeah, well, I think we can continue to think and maybe hop on again for our podcast, another podcast, and share some more
That would be super fun.
ideas. This was really fun. I really enjoyed our time together, and I just really appreciate like I'm walking away with this whole other appreciation for plants and how to interact with them is my big takeaway. As you said, there's just a way to approach the plants, and if you're going to utilize them in some way to like you said, it's a offering of some song or appreciation or something to bring to the plant to you know, to create that relationship and the give and take of the experience you're going to have with a plant. And I had never really thought in that way before. So I so appreciate you sharing that, all your wonderful home remedies, as well as just practical uses of these plants that I'm pretty familiar with. So, you know, it's nice. I'm like, oh, I know the cattail. I know this. I know that. So it was really nice to think about things that I've seen around that I can just now see in a whole different way. So, Sunday, thank you for opening up my eyes and educating me and our viewers here at the Happy Camper Live Raising a Happy Camper podcast. Is there anything else you want to share before we conclude?
I don't think so. I think that you pretty much said it for me, so I'm really glad that that came across.
Awesome, awesome. So thank you for being here. And again, like hopefully we can connect again. And thanks for being here from Northern California and sharing your story and being part of our podcast. So I'm Allison Miller, and you can find us where all podcasts are found these days, Sunday. We are everywhere. So if you would like to listen more and learn more about great ideas to help you raise your campers to be happy ones, feel free to tune in.
Take a moment to shine.